I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation. Nearly half of families cite money as their greatest source of conflict. What if the way we think about money is the real problem? Well, today on the Leadovation podcast, we explore the intersection of money, mindset, and mission. My guest, Lewis Crompton, joins us from the UK, and his story begins in the church, shifts through burnout and reinvention, and leads him to discover financial market trading, a field he not only mastered, but now teaches worldwide. What I find most compelling is how Lewis links financial freedom with something deeper: purpose, family, and creating a life free from the strain of money-related stress. In this conversation, we talk about the mindset shifts required to approach wealth differently, the psychology behind our relationship with money, practical approaches to trading versus traditional investment vehicles, and even the role of community in building financial resilience. We also touched on crypto, volatility, and why so many of our money beliefs are rooted in childhood experiences. Stick with us to the end. You will not only hear how Lewis built his STARTrading method, but also how you can take your first steps towards financial freedom. If you've ever wondered whether money can serve both your mission and your family, this conversation might just shift your perspective. Let's dive in. This is the Leadovation podcast. I'm Dean Newland. So, Lewis, it's great to have you on the show. I know you are coming to us from Great Britain, UK, yes. And so glad to have you. Thank you for extending your day into 5 o'clock, which I believe that's the time where you are hailing from right now. Give us a little bit of background about what you do, because I know we've got a lot to talk about here. And I think that people, when they understand the context of your work, they're going to want to go like, hey, I want to know what makes this guy tick, and I want to understand what he understands, because he's probably going to know something that I don't know. So Give us a little bit of, dress the table a little bit, set the table with respect to your work and how you help people.
Sure. So what I'll do is I'll set the context behind the context first as
well. Sounds good.
That will just kind of help people understand where I come from with what I do. So when I first kind of started working life, I was actually very much involved in the church. I grew up in the church. And when I was 18, 19 years old, I decided to train within the church as a counselor, as a therapist, because I just wanted to change people's lives. I went through that process myself of counseling and therapy for various different things, and it was so impactful. I did what I did in those situations, and I wanted to be able to have that level of impact on other people as well. So that's why I trained as a counselor within the church. Roll into my early 20s, and it burns me out emotionally. I'm working with very, very intense cases without the emotional resources to be able to do so, or really the experience to be able to do so whatsoever. And so I had to step away from the church for that reason, but also various other reasons, which meant I completely lost my income stream and my business, which I had internationally at the time. When that happened, I found myself working in retail on the shop floor. And that is where I realized very, very quickly, this was not the life for me. I did not want to be trapped putting clothes on hangers and things for the rest of my life. And I worked my way up from there into head office, which was still pretty bad and had a terrible manager. And so I made a decision one day that this is not where I'm going to be in 12 months' time. And in that process, I discovered Rich Dad. So Robert Kiyosaki, read his book.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yep.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, exactly, yeah.
Yep.
And it changed my life. And I turned up to one of his seminars, and discovered accidentally financial market trading. And I say accidentally because I thought I was going to learn about property investing, and I'd actually signed up for the wrong thing, which is very much true to form for me. Call it divine intervention, call it me being a bit silly and pressing the wrong buttons in too much haste. I found myself in the financial market seminar. And so that was when I was sat in that room was 12 years ago. Next month. So yeah, quite a long time ago. And that's where I started trading financial markets. 7 months later, left my job. And then Rich Dad Education asked me to come back and teach for them about a year later. So I did that. And then I kind of developed my own system, my own process, my own structure. And I felt like it was simpler, it was easier to use. And so I put my big boy pants on and I put my shoes on and I went out into the big bad world and started teaching people how to use my methodology, which has become known as the STARTrading method, for safely and profitably trading financial markets. So that's what I now do. And I run a community around the world of people who are looking to improve their lives by trading financial markets and increasing their financial well-being.
So you run seminars?
I do seminars, yeah. So I do loads of free stuff. I have like a YouTube channel with loads of free stuff, a Facebook group, and then we have some introductory kind of low cost trainings just to give people a flavor for what it is we do and how we do it and see if it's good for them. And then we do full mentorship programs as well.
Understood. Fantastic. Good for you. Before we started recording this conversation, you kind of gave me a bit of the why behind all of this. And you had mentioned while we were recording this conversation that you came from sort of a spiritual discipline and then working with the church and then moving into these other areas. Tell us about the purpose for you. Why is this so important? Because I think, when we think about trading and financial wherewithal and so forth, there's a lot of baggage that we have around that. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. Some of people are afraid of it. We've got misconceptions about it. Is it too risky? Do I even have the skill sets? But I think if we ground it in something that we all can agree is important, it might move us past some of those barriers. So what's the reason for you to do this?
Yeah, I think firstly, it is so important. I mean, if anybody says they're not motivated by money, then they're wrong or very privileged. One of the two things. And the reason I say that is because I don't consider myself to be particularly money motivated. I'm mission motivated and purpose motivated. However, I'm very conscious that that can take money to make happen. And even if you just want a very peaceful, no stress, no drama life, that will require enough money coming in to be able to pay your bills, cover all your expenses, and not feel stressed out about money. So we all have a certain level of money motivation, even if it's not our primary goal, it's not our primary desire. And for me, it's not my primary desire either. I see it very much as a tool. And as I was saying to you before we started recording, I finally had some time to sit back and relax and just process kind of how life has been, because it's been amazing and lots of stuff's been growing. The community's been doing really, really well, and just sit back in my garden and process a lot of what's been happening. And I found myself over the past few months becoming a bit more disconnected from why is it that I do what I do? Why am I working so hard to help other people when I don't need to help other people from a financial perspective? I am very happy with my own investments and my own trading. I don't need to also have the business. So why am I getting up in the morning, going to bed late, doing extra podcasts here and there to get the message out? What is driving me? Because I still want to be moving forward with this business and this mission. And I realized that for me, what I'm really passionate about is changing people's lives. And I've always struggled to find a niche within that because I've always just wanted to help everybody. And then I thought, okay, where do I see the biggest area for potential help being needed? And I realized that is the family. And families look different depending on where you are, who you are, what your inclinations are. In so many different ways, families can look different. But when we can keep families together in whatever that way that looks like for that family, then we create a really safe environment for children to grow up in and to grow up emotionally secure, emotionally safe, financially secure, and financially safe as well. And one of the biggest, if not the biggest reason why families break down and divorces happen is because of financial stress, financial worry, financial differences. And so if we can take that out of the equation of people's lives, which is what I believe trading does when people have mastered that skill set, then we can save the family, which means we can save the world. And so for me, that is where my massive drive and energy is coming from. And it always had been. I just hadn't put words to it beforehand. And it was that element of, yes, we save the family. And ultimately, I teach parents, but I'm really teaching parents so that they can establish peace in their family, create a safe and peaceful environment for their children, and also create a better life for themselves and greater freedom for themselves as well. So I always want to bring as much fun to families and freedom to families as well. And the best way to do that is to eradicate financial stress and pressure.
That's a great thought. I really appreciate that. I think that's well said. So let's talk about a shift that's needed in mindset in order to do what you're doing. We all know that we've got a fair amount of messages around making money that may not necessarily be positive. It's the root of all evil. And in fact, if we pursue money, we're actually going against mission. We're going against our higher self. We're going against, if we have a religious perspective, it could be against that. We really, in a way, have a culture that almost, lifts up the poor in a way that we think that's the pious way to live. And that's where godliness is. That's where the purity is. And, you look at Hollywood, you look at different media sources, the person who is most evil is often the one who is also very, very wealthy, because they do it to manipulate and to harm others. How do you move people through a different mindset about what you just said? How do you change that mindset? Because I get it. I think you're right on. But what's your process to help people see things differently?
It's a great question. It's a really great question. And I've not been asked this question before. So I'm processing as I talk out loud.
Okay, got it. Do you want to go out in your garden for a while and then come back?
Yeah, I'll come back in about half
Yeah, we'll
an hour.
take a 10-minute break.
We do take people on a process. And I think something that often comes up when I'm working with people, and again, I come from a counseling, a therapeutic background. So when I'm working with people in the financial space, I know we're very often dealing with stuff beyond just what's presented there and then. And there's loads of emotional anchors and past experiences that are feeding their belief system. What I find really interesting is that tends to come down to how much they believe they are worth and what their value is. Because when they don't believe they're valuable, or they don't believe they're worthy of success, and again, whatever success looks like to them, that's also different for every person. If they don't believe they're deserving of that thing which they're seeking after, they will constantly create barriers or emotional strain between them and that thing, which stops them being able to achieve it. So one of the things I do when I'm working with people is try to identify those limiting belief systems and undo them. And one of my core messages that goes alongside that is, yes, you can. Yes, you can change your life. Yes, you can have that thing that you want. And what surprises me over the years as well, and in my own self, is we don't really know what we want a lot of the time. We haven't sat with ourselves to really identify, what do I want from this, from that, from this relationship, from this situation, from this income stream, from this, taking it to a broader scale, what do I actually want from my life? And over the past few years, I've learned into that more. And sometimes the things I thought I wanted, when I've got them, they weren't the things I wanted. But at least I had a direction to go towards. And I never go too far into something that I can't come out of something if need be. And so I think really getting to grips with believing that we can have the things that we want, identifying the things that we actually want, and then believing we're deserving of those things is probably a very, very important process that I try to take people through, as long as they're willing to go through that, because it does take emotional work.
It does. That's a really good point. We actually have a question we sometimes ask teams when we start getting into conversations around disagreements within organizations and the friction that comes from that. we ask them to say, okay, how was conflict dealt with when you were a child in your family? And how is that approach informing the way you manage conflict now as an adult? And then, like, wow, people go back and think, yeah, there is a connection. The way I deal with conflict as a 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old is the same way I was taught to deal with conflict when I was a child of 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so I'm assuming that you're finding that people have a reaction to or relationship to quote unquote money or the
Yeah,
generation of financial wealth that they learned when they were children. So it
yeah,
sounds like you're pretty much, there's a very big psychological component to your work if people are
yeah.
willing to do this.
Yeah, there really is. We have kind of 5 points within our method, and the fourth one is mindset, which
Hmm.
goes so deep. And it's as deep as they want to let us take them on that journey, but it does go very, very deep. I mean, using that as an example, what you've just talked about there, I remember very, very clearly a moment when I was probably in my late teens, and my mum said something to me about money, which I can still hear. I don't
Hmm.
believe it, but I can still hear it. And she shared one of her beliefs about money was that money separates people. So I remember
Ooh.
being a late teenager thinking, oh, okay, well, if I have too much money, then it's going to separate me from people.
Hmm.
And so I automatically created a resistance to having too much money. I mean, what does that mean? That's different for every
Right.
person as well,
Right.
because I didn't want to be separated from my family.
Yes.
And so
Right.
there's so many things like that that people have experienced and they've believed unintentionally that create these resistance for them to have the financial success or the financial lives and abundance that they may actually want to have.
I'm really glad we got into this, Lewis, because, when I first thought about our conversation, I thought like, okay, this is going to be about, you know, generating wealth and, maybe there's some things that we can get from you that would be useful in terms of our own financial well-being. And then I'm so glad that we're digging into this emotional mindset piece because I think it's pivotal. So
Yeah.
that being said, let me ask a couple other quick questions here. So I'm kind of wanting to, because I'm a client of yours in a way, because there's a part of me that is me, and I also think with other people is, all right, I'm going to just once a year I'll put a bunch of money in my 401k, or if I'm an individual owner of a business like we are, I'll throw as much of my limit into a SEP IRA, and then I'll let my guy Greg down in Phoenix take care of it. And then by God, we've been doing pretty well. Thank you very much. And of course, the market has been pretty robust of late. And so you're talking about, in addition to that, taking on some of your own activities regarding trading. So maybe I should back up. Should people continue to fill up their 401ks and their SEP IRAs, or would you recommend they not, and more take that money and do more of their own trading? What's your point of view on that, or both?
Yeah. So I'll caveat this with this is not financial advice.
Yes, I got it. Thank you very much.
But,
And your
yeah.
legal advisor is standing behind your right
Yeah.
shoulder, whispering in your ear, "You can't say that. You can't say that."
So I think again, I'm very much people first, and everyone's situation is different. However, I think if you have the skills that I have, you probably aren't interested in putting your money into a 401k, whatever other pension vehicle you may be thinking about, because you know that although the returns may look good, A, inflation is eating away at those. B, if
Correct.
you're paying someone to manage it for you, you're paying quite high fees. Even when they underperform, if they underperform less than other people, you still get a performance fee. So you're
Yes.
losing money that way. Um, uh, and then where am I on? A, B, C. There we go. This is why I use my fingers for everything. The third reason is you can get far better returns by having a little bit of involvement. Now, what I'm talking about when I say a little bit of involvement, we're talking about 30 minutes per day. So it's really not a lot of your time, but you do need to have the skills in place. So I don't know, with a 401k, you may be, well, generally if it's index tracking, you're looking at an average of 10, 11% return on a yearly basis if you hold it for a long term.
Yeah.
But if you're in the later stage of your life and you decide to start investing in a 401k now, you're not going to get the long-term benefit.
Right.
And we're kind of at all-time highs in the market, which means everybody is expecting a crash at some point. So
Right.
great, you're in the later years of your life and you put all your money into the stock market when we're due to have a crash. That doesn't seem like a good option to me if I was at that stage. Now, again, annual average over 50 years, 10%, 11% per year. Lovely. Now, if you know what I know and you do what my clients do and you are willing to find 30 minutes a day, and not everyone is, and that's totally fine, but you could be making that annual return on a monthly basis. So you're looking at 80 to 100 to 200% annually if you have a little bit of skill set in place.
Got it. Okay. So, all right, this is good. So now we're getting into the investment side here. You just made a point that somebody might say, yeah, Lewis, I don't really want to get into the market because your point is well taken. We seem to be at some highs. There's a lot of concern about a crash. Maybe I'm a little bit older in my years, so let's just play it safe. And I can even say when I was back in 2008, my brother-in-law says, hey, I think I've got something that we should invest in. I got this stockbroker that's helping us out. I think it was a call option or something, right? So we ended up putting in $25,000 into this investment, right? Well, we made it. We did really well, right? And of course, what does the broker do? He wants us to reinvest again. So we reinvest again. And that very day was when the stock market crashed. So everything that we had just earned, we just lost. We came out even, but it was one of those things, like it was an experience of the volatility of the market that really was like probably in some ways got me to think more conservatively about where to invest. That being said, what's your advice for somebody, say mid-career, middle age, who wants to start taking on 30 minutes a day? Do we begin to start planning for, put options where we are betting that the market's going to go down, and then that becomes our strategy? What's your recommendation? I know that you've got a whole program and there's many different facets of it, but is there a general philosophy right now, given the market the way it is, the economy the way it is, the inflation rate the way it is? What's your prognosis, and what do you recommend people think about that might get them into thinking, hey, I should probably follow this guy and do maybe one of his programs?
Yeah, so I think, if you do one of my programs, volatility isn't an issue. But because we can make money as markets go up and as markets go down, we're shorter term, so we don't have to be trapped in a market for a long time frame. And there's also no way you could wipe out your account. It's mathematically impossible to wipe out your seed capital if you follow my methodology. So it's really low risk, but it is high reward. So what I would say, if someone is mid-career, they have some money set aside, they want to put money into the markets, they are thinking long term, and they're not doing one of my trainings, then buying and holding for the long term. I'm still bullish in global markets in general. There's always an economic crisis. There's always something horrendous going on in the world. We know that markets and politics and global everything goes through cycles. So if you're holding for the long term, you shouldn't be worried. And this is where we get into what most people have heard about, but not everyone has, is dollar cost averaging. So instead of waiting to the end of every single year to put some capital into one of these investment vehicles, do a little bit each month that you know you don't need to live on in that time, because then if the markets do go down because they're volatile next month, you buy in again. But you have a different mindset. You think, brilliant, right, last month I bought it at 1,000, now it's down to 800. Okay, my initial 1,000 has gone down, but now it's 800. I'm buying it at a discount, which means when it goes back up to 1,000, I've made profit on the one I bought at a discount. So it does tend to level out, and that's quite a nice way of building peace of mind, because you're not trying to time the market. You want to be in the market if you're doing longer term investing, buying and holding. You want to be in the market for as long as possible. So dollar cost averaging is a good way to go, even if you're mid-career, for the long term, because we know that over time the markets will continue to move up, unless there's a catastrophic apocalyptic moment where markets actually just cease to exist and society as we know it has collapsed. Yeah,
Well, then we're concerned about a lot more than our than our
exactly.
portfolio, right? We're talking about
Yeah,
survival at
yeah.
that point. All right. So one of the big things that seems to be happening from my standpoint is people accepting that crypto is not going anywhere. We've got the president of the United States seemingly, putting a lot of energy and support in that direction. Is crypto the currency of the future? And are we going to need to include that strategy in our 30 minutes a day?
So if you use my method, you can also trade and invest in crypto. It works across all financial markets. So stocks, shares, indexes, commodities like gold, silver, and oil,
Mm.
uh, forex markets, as well as crypto markets. So you can trade it across everything. One thing I say is before you go into any market, you should understand that market in some way, or at least understand how the strategy that you're using performs in that market. One of my favorite quotes from Warren Buffett, which I'm about to butcher, so I'm paraphrasing massively here, but he basically says the biggest risk is not knowing. So going into any form of investment when you don't really know what you're doing, that is where you open yourself up to massive, massive risk. So if you want to go into crypto, you want to go into forex, you want to go into stocks and shares, all of that is totally fine, but understand the process in which you're doing that by, which is where a system like my methodology comes into its own because it's super flexible and can be used across all of those. So
Hmm.
do I think crypto is going to be around for the long term? Of course, definitely. The general accepted wisdom at the moment is that if you're creating a kind of longer term balanced portfolio, then around about 5% is the total allocation you should have in crypto. If you
Hmm.
are fully gung-ho on crypto, then maybe 10%. I mean, of course, you can do whatever you want. You're an adult. But I would primarily focus on major coins such as Bitcoin, because
Yeah.
those are the established ones. Those are the
Yeah.
ones that everything is kind of benchmark off of.
Hmm.
Other When you start getting into other projects, other coins, it's the Wild West. It really, really is the
Yeah.
Wild West. And so it's
Yeah.
very,
It's
very
like,
hard to know. Unless you're going to immerse yourself in that world, I probably wouldn't look to do that.
so in the process of the mind shift that you alluded to earlier, I'm reflecting now on my mom, who has since passed. And at one point, she had what was called like an investment club. I think it was a bunch of women that she became good friends with, and they would invest together, and they would go out and have coffee and chat about the day. But then we would sort of share stock tips, how you're doing, so forth. And I think it was the community that helped my mom uh, move her mind to a different perspective when it came to investing. How does your process sort of help that mind shift moving forward when it comes to a community of others who are doing this? Do you tap into the power of the community, or is this pretty much me by myself in my pajamas, 3 o'clock in the morning, can't sleep, with a cup of coffee, and working on my own portfolio, my own investments, but I'm not necessarily connecting to other people and getting support?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if you use the STARTrading method, you never have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do this.
Okay,
It's
good. I can get
That's
some
very
sleep
much
then. Thank you. Okay.
happening, yeah. So we do very much tap into community. I'm very much a community orientated person. I grew up in the church, very much a community. The reality is, and you kind of identified it quite well there, that trading is a solitary activity. It is just you and a screen and the markets, which is beautiful in some ways. You don't have to rely on anybody else. It's just you and the market. You don't have to worry about staff. You don't have to worry about managers. You don't have to worry about clients or anything like that. It's just you and the screen, which is great. But if that was
Yes.
all it was and you didn't have a community of people, then it could become quite lonely. And so I wanted to make sure, yes, I deployed and gave out to the world high quality education, but I wanted to connect people together at the same time as well. And there's very much a sociological and psychological truth that we become more like the people we spend time with. And so
Yes.
what we tap into in that community element is people who've been on this trading journey with me for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and people who are brand new into their trading journey. They can see where they can get to. They can see that other people just like them who had no prior experience are now successful traders who are leaving their jobs, paying for holidays, doing all those things that they want to do because they have this newfound financial abundance through trading, so that it becomes possible. And I think one of the things I talked about from a mindset perspective right near the start was that people need to believe they can do this. And so if you see other people can do it, then you believe you can. And a lot of the hate comments and things I get online are basically people who don't believe it's possible. That's because they've never been around someone who's made it possible for themselves.
Yeah,
and so they automatically think it's a scam. They think it's this. They think it's that. They think you're talking rubbish. And the amount of times I hear people say, you need to put your money into an equivalent of what's the 401k? There we go. Remember 401k. And I just always remind people, it's like, but you're not factoring in inflation to that, because inflation absolutely wipes out most of those gains. So great, you might be a millionaire in 50 years' time, but you don't need to wait 50 years. But that they're so conditioned to think that is the only way to invest for the future, that they can't see any other opportunities that are there. And if they just took the time to look or read something which is slightly different, but very measured and isn't overly hyped, they might find that there's actually a better way to do things.
So, Lewis, how do people then, like if someone's sitting in their car listening to this, what do they do next? I mean, how do they connect with you, your work? Like, I think that sometimes change, certainly when it comes to big change, like what some people would be doing with you, requires a small first step, because if we try to take on the whole elephant, it's just like, it's too much, it's like, I don't know how to go. So I don't know how to do this at all. So I'm just not going to do anything, because at least I know what I'm doing, even though I may not be happy with it. At least there's familiarity with that. You're offering a new way of doing something. Like, what are the first 2 or 3 steps that I should take if I'm interested in exploring this with you further?
Yeah. So I do have lots of free resources, I said. I'd love to be able to say you could buy my book. I haven't finished writing it yet, though, but it is in process.
Okay.
That is one of the things that's in process. But I do have an ebook which people can download for free, which is kind of an introduction to this type of stuff. And I would say there is very good people out there who do what I do. I'm not the only person who actually wants to help people in this space. What I would say is there's a lot of bad people, a lot of people who aren't doing this very, very well and not doing this for the right reasons. So pick somebody that you feel like you can trust, who is in this arena, which you might think is worth exploring, and just absorb as much of what they talk about as you possibly can. Turn up to their stuff. If they've got low cost stuff, turn up to that. Read what you can about them, check out their podcast, check out their free resources, all of that kind of thing. And if you feel like it's a good fit for you, then take it to the next level with that person. But you can find yourself just spreading yourself across too many different voices, which will only serve to confuse you and cause you to not take any meaningful action. So a really good way to find me is Instagram. And I've got all my stuff on there, or links to it on there.
But in addition to the free resources, which I think is great that you're able to provide that, what about, if they were to engage with you in some sort of way, like, all right, I'm sold now. Thank you. I've got it. You got me a hello. I've looked at your stuff. You seem legit. I feel comfortable. I'm ready to take, another step. What are the other steps that they could take?
So the best next step from that is probably one of my 5-night foundation trainings. So we call those wealth through trading, because we're showing you how to build wealth through trading. Clues in the name, right? So that's probably the best next step. So that at the moment, at the time of recording this, is £98, which is about $120. But that's for 5 full nights of teaching. But also around the teaching, we give you space to practice, because this isn't a theoretical skill set. This is a practical skill set. So we need to give you information, and then we need to make sure you're practicing that skill set and then getting feedback from my team, because it's the application of the knowledge that makes you successful, not just having the knowledge in the first place. So we need to make sure we basically show you the information, tell you how to use the information, practice it, and then give you feedback. And that introductory foundation training is over 5 nights that we do that.
All right. So that's probably a really good paid sales call where people get to taste the meal before they actually sit down and buy the steak, right? We're getting a little mouche bouche, if you will. The salad course. What's the full meal deal?
The full meal deal would be one of our mentorship options. So we have a 2-month mentorship, we have a 6-month mentorship, and we also have a 1-to-1 mentorship. So they range from, the training options range from that £98 all the way up to £60,000, depending on the level of support and duration that people want for this form of investment.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really curious. I think you're onto something. And what I like about you, Lewis, is that you have such a sweet, open demeanor about you. You don't come off as an individual whereby I feel like you're going to take advantage. You provide options. You let the individual make their own decisions, and you're there to support it. And I think you're coming at this with the right mission focus, the right heart. So, well done. I mean, it's really great. So, how you mentioned that you've got a fairly large network, and you sound like you're worldwide, right? You're doing these workshops all over the place. What's your vision? What do you see over the next 5 years for this?
More change, more growth. And really what I want to do is build a platform where we can help people in any part of the world start to invest safely and profitably. So in the future, I like the idea of having our own broker, because I don't think people realize this, and it's one of my biggest bugbears, but when you put money into a savings account in the bank, what that bank is doing with your money is everything they tell you is too risky. So
they're investing in it. Yes.
Investing, right? Yeah. So when you put money in savings, you're not saving, you're investing in the bank. They're out taking that money and investing it into all sorts of different things, including Forex, stocks and shares, crypto, everything. Yeah. They're making exceptional returns with that money because they know how and you don't. And they pay you an absolutely pathetic return as a thank you.
Correct.
So if we just learned what they're doing and ignored them telling us it's risky, and actually just learned how to do it safely, we could actually be getting the better returns. So I want to create a global community where we can then end up actually lobbying political institutions to make better financial decisions for the benefit of our nations. Because right now in the UK, every decision that's being made by our government is punishing people on a financial level and keeping money out of the people's pocket and in the government's pocket. And it's very, very upsetting to see, and it's making life very, very hard for people. And guess who it's actually making life hard for? Not super wealthy people, but for middle class and lower class people, or I don't really like the word lower class, middle income and lower income families. Yes. That's who it's making it harder for.
Yeah, well, I think you'll find that similar sentiment and activity is happening here in the States as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. This has been great. So Lewis, thank you so much for your time on this. This has been thought-provoking, and I think I wanted to see if there was another question that came to mind. No, I guess not. I mean, but you're going to make me think. I'll probably be running around in my head all day about this conversation. But thank you so much for your time on this. This has been really fascinating.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to Leadervation with Dean Newlund. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com, or check the show notes. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. Transform your leadership success with Leadervation.